I'll start the recording. Okay, Olivia, you know what? I actually built into my lesson plan tonight I put Olivia's comments at the beginning. No, I didn't. I thought maybe we should talk about the budget situation and actually put it on the lesson plan. But you said you had a question?
Yeah, it has nothing to do with things that you just thought you were
Dang it.
going to ask about. No, do we have any due dates coming up for the program in general, like that our mentor needs to fill out or anything like that?
Sure, great question.
The checks thing?
Yep, and I don't know if everyone heard that question, so at home I'll repeat it. Question was if there are any deadlines or anything like that for your program. So let's go through a couple things. First of all, the school leadership organization, which is currently on Blackboard, I am in the process of migrating that to Canvas, but for right now it's still on Blackboard. So always check there. If you plan on graduating or completing your program in May of next year, the deadline to apply is October 15th. So it is coming up. And actually, and I'll share my screen with folks at home.
So it says we have a summer class next summer, the capstone or project or.
Only the EDS folks would have a class next summer.
So we will graduate in August?
Are you an EDS person? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yes, you will graduate in August.
Okay.
And you must let you know, I'm just going to go ahead and bring up the UTC Learn website so that we can go through the deadlines.
And Olivia can totally do real class. You're welcome.
You know what? No, actually, I wanted to talk about this anyway because one of the things I wanted to make sure I mentioned is registration for the fall. I thought about actually just doing it tonight and one by one, if you need me to release a whole, doing it, but I think that would take up too much time. So one of the things I did want to let you know is if you have an advising hold on your account and you want to register, what you need to do is email me. First of all, if you have any questions, I am your advisor. So if you have questions, email me those. But if you just, you know, our program, for most of you, we've done a program of study. You know this is what you have to do. So there shouldn't be much question there. But to register, if you need the hold release, just email me, but include your UTC ID, the 3 letters and 3 numbers. That way I know I enter that in the system and I can release that advising hold really quickly. I know I've done it for several of you, but not everyone.
Well, if you haven't registered for classes, that 5820 is still showing as full.
5820 will show as full for everyone. There you'll need to email me and just ask, because that class has prerequisites, you have to have permission to register for it. So that's that.
I think mine just let me. I think mine did too. Is that okay?
Maybe Olivia didn't. Would you have not had one of the classes that was a prereq?
I don't know how much taking every class everybody else is taking.
I don't either.
But no, it showed like when I clicked on it, it said full, and then when I registered for it anyway, it gave me a.
Says error prevention.
Yeah.
Classes closed.
Yeah. Just email me, and I'll send an email to the person who does the releasing of those things. Okay.
Who's going to teach the 5760 class? You know?
Sure.
Dr. Drake.
It'll just be Dr. Drake, Marcia Drake. To the best of my knowledge, it's going to be Marcia Drake from Hamilton County Schools. I've submitted 2 emails to my department head to confirm that, and I haven't gotten one back yet. So I suspect what'll happen is it'll be about the start of school, and she'll say, "Oh yeah, let's just do that." So yeah. All right. So I'm in the school leadership organization, if you'd like to follow along, and it lists some graduate school deadlines. So, and I had one student who was ready to finish their program this summer and missed this deadline. And now they're completely done with their program. Their portfolio was submitted. They didn't apply to graduate, and now they can't graduate until December. So, right, that's the bad news. The good news is because they've met all the requirements of the program, they can apply for their license. The bad news is they don't have the transcript yet. So let's go through here. If you plan on graduating in the spring, that's May, the deadline is October 15th. I doubt any of you plan on graduating in December, but if you do, we've missed the deadline. That's the bad news. The good news is there's a $50 late fee and you can still get on the December graduation list. And then for those of you who may be graduating in the summer, the EDS folks who have program evaluation still next summer, you need to apply by March to graduate. Also, I'll just, we've gone over this, but I'll just review it again real quickly. Your ticket out of the program, you will have an incomplete, almost certainly, in at least one course, possibly two. If you are getting a principal's license, if you're in that program, you will most likely have an incomplete in EDA. That's 5820, the practicum. That's the gatekeeper, if you will, for you. For those of you who are in teacher leadership, you will most likely have an incomplete in your capstone class, or you will complete your program during the capstone class. But for you, the capstone class is your gate. I guess there's probably a better term than that, but that's the hurdle you have to get over. You have to pass that class, because that's the class where your portfolio is due. Your portfolio is the ticket out of the program. Once that's due and accepted, you've met every requirement. And that's—
We'll take that class in fall, even though our portfolio is not due until spring.
Yes. Any of you in the principal leadership program will take 5820, which is the practicum course. You'll take it this coming fall. In that class, we'll study for the SLA exam. I just had a student from Knoxville. I just talked to him this last week, and he was thanking me so much. He's like, that class did it. I was able to get through, and without it, I probably wouldn't have. He needed a 160. He got a 168, but it was close. But that's a pass. We'll take it. Last year's cohort, they hated that I told them this because they didn't want to be the first person, but I've yet to have a person who hasn't passed the SLA since I've been here since 2014, except one person who did not take it seriously, extended the incomplete, tried to take it without coming to class and things. That person didn't pass. She did pass the second time after remediating and working on it. But so you don't want to be the first person to not pass the SLA. That being said, no pressure. That being said, the SLA changes for this year.
Okay.
So, right. And it's new to me and new to you, so we're going to be learning together. The previous SLA had fewer multiple choice questions, or selected response, they call them, and more of the constructed response, and more, thank you, of the constructed response or essay questions. They had 7. I think they're going down to 4 essays and adding more of the selected response or multiple choice. I think the reason they do that is for ease of grading, because it's less reading, and of course they have to hire people to read your essays.
How long does it take to get this course back?
Usually just about 2 weeks. Yeah. Yeah.
Is it online or paper pencil?
It's an online, and we will want to get back on track here in a minute, but just so you know, for the SLA, you will feel very prepared when you're done with 5820 in the fall. I always have a student who just took the exam the previous year come in, talk about the experience, give you any pointers, you know, that they have. You can ask them questions. And we will go through, you'll do at least 85 practice multiple choice questions. Every week, your discussion board is a constructed response for that class. So you'll go through all of the topics there too. So I think you'll feel pretty well prepared for that after that class. The reason that I preface the electronic portfolio and the SLA and all that is because that's the other set of most important dates for you. Your portfolio link is due to me on the first of the month, the month prior to when you want to graduate. So if you plan on graduating in May, I need your portfolio link by April 1. If you plan on graduating this should say first. Oh, it says 5th because I give you a couple more days. That's nice. It's technically July 1. I must have changed this for the holiday last year.
No, that's the graduation deadline. Go down
Is it? Oh, okay. Thank you.
below.
Here we go. July 1 is when you must submit for graduating in August, and November 1 for graduating in December. Thanks. I was thinking one thing and looking at a different thing. So that's another important deadline. So these are the most important deadlines. To apply for graduations, you do that on your MyMox degree. So that's online is where you fill out that application. Does that make sense?
It's not just this PDF.
I don't think so.
This is what, when you click on that link, it comes up.
Yeah, no, I think you have to do it in MyMox degree now also. I'm not even so sure that you don't need to do it both places, to tell you the truth. The efficiency at UTC is not quite maybe where it needs to be, but at any rate.
When is, I know that's the due date, but can we fill it out now, or do we need to wait until we're in this classes?
What I would recommend is that if you plan on graduating in May, submit it like around the 1st of October. I don't think they'll do anything to you if you do it now, but they might lose it or something. I don't know. I would wait until around October. And I'll, you know, when we're in the practicum class this fall, I'll remind you of that you should be doing that. Yeah.
And what about registering for the SLA? That's something that we don't need a ton of time in ahead of time.
No. You will, in the 5820 practicum class, I will talk to you about registering for the SLA, when you want to do it. The thing is they don't open up certain windows until you get closer to that time. And I usually ask students to take it in January or February.
And that's what it costs, like $400.
$425. And actually, here's a bonus. Dr. Pratt and I have been giving students one Saturday off from class in the spring, in February, because Chattanooga has been having a SLA session, exam session during that time. So for the past 2 years, we've just said, you know what, no class, your class is to take the SLA on February, whatever, 19th or whatever it is. Yeah. So great question. I covered the registration. As far as program checkpoints, at this point, most of you should have completed a mentor evaluation checkpoint 1 and checkpoint 2.
Wait, let me check my two.
It was due in spring. Yep. Yep.
Yeah, I did that.
Don't act like I'm the only one that didn't do it.
Right.
I know, right?
So if you haven't done that, you'll need to do that.
So I thought it was,
So they just need to sign our field experience form?
No,
No, okay.
Sure, there's like a sheet.
Yeah.
let me show you.
The checkpoint 2 was just like the checkpoint 1.
But wasn't, yeah,
Yes.
checkpoint one was in between fall and spring. And
Yes.
checkpoint 2 is after spring.
Yes.
So if they're late, is that okay?
Yes. Here's the you've done it again. Here's the deal with the program checkpoints. If I've been less than like picky on checking those. sometimes I've had a graduate assistant do it. Usually where those come into play is people who are struggling in the program. That's when I really make sure you submit them to me. And when it comes to your portfolio and finishing, I'll need to see all 3 of them uploaded. But technically, they should be done after the 1st and 2nd semester. Usually, if I thought you were in danger, I would have already asked for it, to be honest. And I've done that about once a year. I've had to say, I need to see this because I'm worried. And you know what? For the first time this year, I also, on a final program evaluation, final mentor evaluation, had someone not pass it for the first time. Yep, that I haven't had experienced that before because checkpoints 1 and 2 were great. But there was
When is the final mentor evaluation?
let me show you right now.
You're welcome, everybody.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
No, it's like adding definitely here, they're not.
Okay. All right.
I need them on the calendar.
So I'm in the online organization. I'm under program info and forms. I am going down to field experience information, but that's not where it is. Just kidding. Mentor handbook and all forms, that makes more sense. Hey, look at there. Okay, you did have to have a submitted mentor info and authorization last year. Here's the checkpoint 1 and 2 evaluation. When I say here, I mean here. This is very much shorter than the final mentor evaluation. Basically, you list what you've done for field experience, and they rate you on that field experience 1 through 5, okay? The other reason that I spend less time on this is because several of you won't have a mentor 1 or 2 checkpoint evaluation. Those of you who are only doing the postmaster's certificate, for some people, they're only required to take 12 credits. So for some people, they're only here 2 semesters, so they can't possibly get 3 evaluations in 2 semesters. The most important of the evaluations, though, is the final mentor evaluation. And here you have the either teacher leadership or principal licensure 1. This is much more complex. And it will require you to put in nearly all of the field experience, and it will require your mentor to grade you on everything. In the 5820 class, I will show you the rubric for this. You need to score at a 3 or above in every one of these categories. And like I said, this is the first time I've had someone not score at the 3 or above in each of the categories. And then that person has to, I emailed that person recently and said, you can't graduate without this at a 3 or above. Here's the standards that aren't at a 3 or above. Here's what you need to do to get it to a 3 or above. So it's good to be in constant contact with your mentor. You know, I'd like to do a better job of getting out in your schools and meeting your mentors. That's going to be one of my goals this fall, is to get out into your schools. It's just a challenge. One thing I might try and do, because I think I've shared this with you, we're considering and almost certainly going to be moving this to an online program, which would mean the mentor interaction could easily be done through Zoom. So I can just provide a Zoom link and we can have a 3-way meeting, you, your mentor, me, and have a discussion. And I think that'll actually facilitate better. I've really started using Zoom for so many things. And several students, you know, you want to have a meeting to go through this or that. I'm like, let's just Zoom and do it. It just makes life so much easier. Being able to share screens, for example. Okay, so that is, any other questions on the program? Those are actually, oh, your final mentor evaluation is submitted in your electronic portfolio. You can't graduate without it. So it's, It just has to be in the portfolio. Yeah. Yep. Any other program?
So pretty much by before April 1st.
Yes.
Cool.
Yeah. Yep. And honestly, every cohort is asked for a brief, like a short extension of that date. It kind of depends. Like last year, spring break fell right before it was due, and I gave everyone until the end of spring break to get their portfolio in. So yeah. Okay. So this year, when is spring break? When is spring break? So this year it'll probably be due on the 11th, to be honest, Anna. I don't know if you heard that. But if spring break is the week before that, if it's possible, I like to give you a spring break because I know it's very intense to do that. Was there anything you wanted to talk about with the Hamilton County budget? I did a little, peeking around online. I know they had another meeting. I saw Dr. Johnson's response online. And so why don't you guys tell me what's happening? I'm curious. I saw a whole big list of potential construction projects.
That was the big news that was announced yesterday.
Yep.
We had the county commissioners and the board members came together for a meeting with MGT is the contractors that we brought in to address all of the school safety and just building constraints. They stress that the community doesn't understand. They're not, what they're putting out in these proposals are not current recommendations. They're just data-driven facts. But what they are put out is the possibility of, or suggestions, but not recommendations, of closing up to 15
I
schools.
saw that.
Relocating a handful of programs, combining. The real big data point that was an eye-opener for me is that they say on a national average, schools buildings should hold 1,000 students. And so we serve just over 44,000 students and have 79 school buildings. So we're totally lopsided in the amount of students we have to the amount of buildings we're trying to upkeep.
Mm-hmm.
So we continue to talk about how poorly our buildings are and how hard it is to upkeep them. But for a lot of really silly reasons, we have too many.
Sure. What do you think of that as a future administrator? It'll be fewer jobs, first of all. You know what else will be interesting about those jobs? They're going to be harder. Now, they may add administrative positions, maybe. Honestly, my experience along those lines has been if students get added to a school, they just expect you to do more with the same. Counseling, it has been, I've seen that as a problem. I used to work in a school district of about 12,000 students, and they did some consolidation and did not expand administrative staff or counseling staff in those schools. And it was, I wouldn't have wanted to have been a principal in those schools.
We're already way below.
Yeah.
And what's also hard to take into account is they put these national averages based on just that national averages. No one takes into account just the size of a classroom and how many chairs and desks
Right.
fit into it, let alone realizing that one building has much bigger classrooms and could have a lot more students, but there's still ratios to play into effect. While other buildings have much smaller classrooms, and while legally we can put up to 35 kids in a class, they really only fit 20. And so that's the lopsidedness of how old and new our different school buildings are, as well as our buildings are in a weird generational gap between when we were Hamilton County schools and Chattanooga City schools. They were built totally differently, and then now we're all treated the same.
Interesting. Anything else along budget lines?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
All right. Yeah. I wanted to read one thing, and I know that your checking for understanding or quiz was not Hamilton County specific, but I wanted to read to you from Hamilton County Board of Education Policy 4.301. When it comes to school field trips, item 5, cost. School officials are reminded that they may not require the payment of any fees as a condition of any student attending any field trip that occurs during any portion of the regular school day or that is offered in connection with a class offered for credit, even if the trip is voluntary. And I also wanted to read to
Can I
you
comment on that, though?
from the Department of Education. From the Department of Education, State Attorney General opinion, the state statute prohibits requiring any student, regardless of income, to pay fees for field trips, any part of which occur during the school day. That's from the Department of Education.
But the word in that is required. And
Right.
it's true, we cannot require, but we can ask students to pay. But
In
what we
charge,
can't,
we can't.
Right.
Keep
But
them
we
out,
cannot,
not
we
them.
question was it okay to charge students for field trips?
And
Was
it
my
is.
question okay?
Yeah, it was allowed, or allowed.
Yeah.
It was not, because we are allowed to ask them to
They
pay.
just don't have to.
We just
pay.
cannot,
You can
Require them
charge
to pay
someone.
for it.
we cannot prevent them from going if they're not.
Or charge them for it.
Yeah, I mean,
So what I'm hearing is possibly my wording of the question was ambiguous. Okay. I did get a couple follow-up emails from a couple students on that one. And I was like, but it says this, and I said I'd bring it up in class. Here's my promise to you. If that question ends up being something that will impact your grade, if it looks like you're on the borderline between a, let's just take Bert. If you're on the borderline between the C and the D, and that point is the difference, shoot me an email before grades are due and say, hey, this point makes the difference. Can you see to it? It probably won't, but if it does, I'll gladly change that for you, because I can see where there's a difference between is it okay to ask and is it okay to require. That question should have asked, is it okay?
Charge a small fee.
What?
It is okay to charge a small fee to offset the 4th grade field trip to the aquarium.
See, now charging to me seems like it's required. If you're charging someone, so I don't know that it was less than. All right. So point being that we all learned that state statute and likely district policy, depending on which district you're in, will make it so that you cannot require students to pay for field trips if they are during the regular
Or the
school
fees in general.
day.
So
Right.
We ask students to pay a school, some schools ask them to pay a school fee.
Yep.
But we cannot prevent them from an education. if they're
Right,
not paying.
right. So we had, when I was a principal, our Board of Education did that as well. They charged fees that you could not require people to pay that. But the key here is that people don't know that. And most people, like me, someone says, oh, this is due, and you see the bill on your fridge and you pay it, and you don't ask questions. And we had a great amount of income from doing that. One thing, and I actually have a voicemail, I have a bunch that I may play tonight. I doubt it, but I always like to have more than enough content for class. And one of the things I have is 9 different voicemails that I got as a principal. And one of them is complaining because what we used to do is not give kids their report card if they didn't pay their fees. That became a really big issue with one. Yeah, well, I was just going to say the other thing that became a national issue actually recently was what to do when students don't pay or families don't pay for their lunch accounts and they're not on free and reduced lunch. I heard it on a national radio talk show that one school gives kids peanut butter and jelly sack lunches when their account is in arrears. And this talk show host went on and how this school was horrible. It's not the student's fault and everything else. And I thought to myself, that's exactly what we did. When your account got -25, you went on peanut butter and jelly. You got a peanut butter and jelly sack lunch that included free peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, which, by the way, as the principal, that's what I brought to school. And I thought to myself, I would gladly take that. You got a bag of chips, you got an apple, you got a milk as part of that for no cost. I would be like, my kid's never going to pay again. Right?
What I'm wearing every day.
Exactly. Wait, if they're in trouble, you're going to keep them after school? keep him as long as you would like. He's yours for all I care. But it just raises interesting topic for discussion because can we technically hold students accountable for the actions of their parents? But by the flip side of that is if you don't, as a school, do something, nothing's going to change. If it doesn't hurt a little, if the kid doesn't come home and say, you know, if I don't pay my lunch account, this, or that, then parents aren't going to act. So we used to charge for field trips, most paid. I may have told you this story before. My favorite parent story, one of my favorites, I've got many. Actually, my really favorite is the mom who came in with her shirt that was down to here. She was a really large lady, and she came in to yell at me, and every time she was yelling, her belly was going up and down right in front of me. And I was trying so hard not to laugh. It was the hardest I've ever tried not to laugh in my life. Which, by the way, the same parent, now you've really got me going, Olivia. The same parent, when I went to do a house visit, because that student tried to sell drugs at a school dance, so I had to go and deliver some curriculum. The parent, Mandy was her name, came to the door in a t-shirt and underwear. In a t-shirt that would fit like a 4-year-old girl, and she was like a 35-year-old woman, rather large. And I literally had to go, Mandy, please come put some clothes on and come back to the door, and I'd like to talk to you about Raquel. And it was that. That's my favorite story. But what was the one? What was the one I wanted? Oh, the parents who came in, we had a extracurricular field trip. We would do periodically, just for fun, because we're a middle school, we do things for fun. We would, for example, we went to a Minnesota Timberwolves game. You know what? We'll take as many people as sign up. We can get tickets for this price. If you want to go, it costs you $30. And we get 2 coaches, probably at least full of kids, to go and see a Timberwolves game or whatever. Well, there was a fund that would help offset that for people, students we knew who were never going to get to go and see a Timberwolves game. And a lot of that money, frankly, came from our faculty and staff through donations. This one mom came in and said, you know, I forget the kid's name, really wants to go to the trip, but we just can't afford it. Can you guys cover it? And she came in smelling like smoke so bad. And for the first time, I just took a stand and I said, you know what? That fund doesn't have any money this year. We won't be able to cover it. And she said, oh, so I'll have to pay for it? I said, yes. And her next words, and I kid you not, do you have change for 100? Was what she said. So I'm like, yep, I'll get you change. It was $20 or whatever. And she had 100 in her pocket, but didn't want to pay it. That was I had such a pet peeve over people, parents who didn't have money to do this or that. And regardless of your view on smoking, they would come in smelling like smoke so bad, and it bothered me so much that they have money for cigarettes, but they don't have money to pay for. But okay, now I'm going to step off my tangent. So anything else that, no, we don't have time for anything else. Here's what's happening tonight, starting at about 6:05. I have 4 elementary school principals coming in to talk with you. I wish I knew exactly their schools. I think they're mostly East something. 2 are former students of mine, Jasmine Farrow, Martha McMillan. 1 is at Calvin Donaldson. I think it's Rose Odom. And 1, I'm not sure where Lee Ziegler is right now. I think we saw Sadi Daisy. Where? Daisy, yeah. Lee Ziegler, Rose Odom, Martha McMillan, and Jasmine Farrow. East Side. I knew it was East something. Yeah. I chose elementary. We had high school and kind of Howard High School, middle school last time. So I think we covered high school. Your scheduling book was all middle school. I want to make sure we get all 3 grade levels covered. Here's how we're going to do it tonight, and our panelists don't know this. I'm going to have them come in first and introduce themselves to you so you know who they are. But rather than do it just as a, you ask questions to them and they sit here, because there's 4 people, 1 person might not get much of an opportunity to talk. And I value all of them giving of their time. So we're going to do it like speed dating tonight. And here's how it's going to work. Kim and Kristen are at home or on the road, and they are going to be one group, and I'll have my laptop set up in my office where they'll be in there. So they'll get a little bit more. There'll only be 2 of them, so you guys are really going to have some good questions. Or I guess I could ask one of you if you wanted to sit in the office with them. That would be fine too. That might work. Otherwise, I'm going to put you in this room and 2 other rooms, and I'm going to ask the administrators to move so I don't have to keep carrying my laptop around with the people from home on it. And I'm going to ask you to ask them questions primarily related to money. Is that me? Oh, it's time to feed the meter. Primarily related to money. Sorry, don't mind me. I'm just going to remind me in 3 minutes to feed my meter. Primarily related to money and attendance, because those are topics we didn't really get to talk with our administrators earlier. But you're welcome to ask them any questions you would like. In particular, maybe transitioning to the principalship might be of interest. After that tonight, we're going to have some time. We're going to talk quite a bit about bullying, which has to do with discipline. So we will talk about discipline a little. But if you have a discipline-specific, discipline-related specifically question and you want to ask that, that's fine. So what I'd like to do, as we've done before, is take a few moments to formulate some questions around those topics so that our panelist time is, respected as much as humanly possible. So I'd like to do is put you in a few groups, and what I'll maybe do is I'll ask 2 of you to come into my office, and I'll bring 1 chair in there, and you can join Kristen and Kim online, and then let's see, if we bring maybe, I can't really do 3. We'll just do it this way. Julie and Olivia, you can go in my office. And we can do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. We can do 3 groups in here. We'll do 3 groups in here, 1 group in my office. So I'd like to give you, about 15 minutes to formulate questions so that you have some good questions for our panelists when they come in. Again, after that, we're going to talk about bullying tonight. And if time allows, we're going to talk about school finance, not budgeting, but finance. Things like, how do schools get their money? How do we do that in an equitable fashion? Those kind of things. So, questions? All right. Julie and Olivia, if you guys want to, right next door. And let's see, maybe we can add 2 people up here to Bert, and maybe Lennon come up here, Julie come up here. You 3 can work together, and you 4 can work together. And maybe you can join here. Make sense? All right, perfect. You there. I'll bring 1 chair. Yeah. You're not in it? Shoot me an email that says you need to be. Yeah. And I'll let people on Walker Center know that.
No, I know. Perfect. I just think I text him everything. Yeah, we recreated a lot of them. I mean, I made a lot of them. I can make some grids. I just can't make everybody.
People at home, we'll have other people joining you in just a minute. I'm going to turn your volume down in here so that no one can hear you. And I'm going to Stop sharing that, and I'm going to stop her.
As well as some parent on our leadership team. So anytime we're going to spend large amounts of money, I mean, if we're just buying school supplies or something in the supply closet, we just go ahead and do that. But anytime we're going to do a large amount of money, we'll run our leadership team, the parents and community members. The PA might talk about it at our day meetings. We have a parent volunteer coordinator. We have monthly meetings. If there are things that we need parents and whatnot to know about, then our parent volunteer coordinator will talk about those at her meetings. So we have lots of opportunities to push anything that's big by anybody who needs to see it before it gets purchased. But we always make sure it aligns with what our goals are, what exactly we're trying to do.
Y'all are Title I students. What you guys put as priorities in your Title I budget?
Instructional items. So like right now we're piloting expeditionary learning, K5. So there's 2 different pilot programs going on for our literacy program. And so right now our priorities are first and making sure that we have enough support staff to handle anything that we're trying to do. We're paying for 1.5 instructional coaches, we're paying for 2 educational assistants, and might pay for an interventionist we're hoping to have money for. And then our next priority right now is what items not have in the curriculum that we need to supplement that curriculum. And so that's going to be our next priority.
We talked a little more about
What curriculum are you on?
Expeditionary learning.
That's the curriculum.
Yeah, EL education. So we went to a training. There's like 6 schools on it, and we just got our supplies in. So we're gonna have an unboxing party this weekend in the cafeteria and unbox all the supplies and inventory. A lot of collaboration. We're doing on Wednesdays. We're doing 1.5-hour PLC professional learning community time, so that teachers can get together and plan for those expeditionary learning lessons, and they can have that time as a team and with the coach. That's longer. Normally they get 45 minutes. You know, y'all who are in schools know that 45 minutes turns into like 30 really quickly. So just making sure that they have an hour and a half of dedicated time on Wednesday, work on the planning and the rollout of it.
Our other questions are about attendance. So I guess you want to start with how do you deal with attendance?
Parent thing.
Yeah.
So we actually just, I won't say numbers because all the data is still embargoed, but we lowered our chronic absenteeism rate by a number, a good percentage of. So we were really excited about that. We push a lot of. One thing we do is we try and make sure that on the schedule at 8 o'clock, everyone has some kind of instruction going on. And at the end of the day, the bell rings at 2:55. At 2:55, that's some kind of instruction. So like, it's not like, you know, oh, I have PE first thing in the morning, I can be late, or, you know, we got to recess at the end of the day, so I can leave early. Like, we try and make sure it's all instruction on both ends of the day. So that way it's easy to say, you know, your child has missed 14 days of literacy in a row. You know, this is where they are. This is where they've been missing 14 days is not going to get them there. We push a lot of, on our parent meetings, our parent volunteer coordinator talks about attendance and the importance of it every month in those meetings. And we have the meetings at different times during the day to make sure that everybody can attend. We usually have one right at 8:30, and then we'll either have one at like 1 o'clock or at like 4 o'clock. So that way we can hit our morning folks as well as our afternoon folks. And then honestly, we make a whole lot of parent. So we have about 70% of our population is Hispanic, and so we have a full-time translator. So we do a lot of parent phone calls to people as they miss, whether it's administration, our school counselor, our parent volunteer coordinator, or our translator making those calls to just, you know, talk with parents and find out why is their kid missing and see what we can do to help. And a lot of times it comes down to transportation. The kid rides the bus to school, something happened, they missed the bus, whatever, they can't get there. So we just try and be as local as possible. I've taken kids home after school before, you know, who came to school, but their parents weren't going to have a way to pick them up, so that's why they weren't going to come to school, but they came anyways. And you know, so we just try and do what we can to help kids be at school. And I think the one thing we're trying to stress with our teachers, we have a large turnover rate, but one thing we try and stress with our teachers is the more fun and engaging your lessons are, you know, the more the kids are going to want to be there. And so the expeditionary learning curriculum, I think, is going to help a lot with that, because there's a lot of really cool.
The next one, I mean, you already answered it. Like, how do you encourage attendance? So,
We talk about it anytime we can. I mean, our principal has even gotten to the point with some families where, so they sign out on my card, and if they've been checked out like more than a certain number of times, she'll take a red marker and draw a line underneath the last time they signed out, and like put like, you know, she doesn't put DCS, but she like scribbles something that looks like it could be that. So that way parents, like, you know, like they start seeing, oh, we are paying attention to the number of times you checked your child out, you know, so we're not actually doing anything about it, but sometimes, yeah, you know, if it's a habit, we want them to kind of see we're paying attention to this. And a lot of times that helps. You play a lot of games, administrator. You play a lot of games.
Kristen, did you want to talk about your transition questions?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, so I guess my biggest question just is literally going from like teacher to assistant principal, and just in general kind of, you know, how that transition was, how you felt about it. Like, did you feel prepared from, I guess, you went through this program?
Yeah, so I graduated from this program in 2015. I had just finished my 4th year of teaching. And as soon as I graduated from this program, I got so I was a math coach for a year at Clifton Hills and Hickson Elementary. And then I was moving back to Eastlake to be their math coach. Eastlake is where I taught. I was moving back there to be their math coach. And at the end of July, there was a principal at another school who got put under investigation for money stuff. So they took our assistant principal and moved her. So I interviewed on the 25th, was hired on the 26th, and started work on the 27th of July.
Wow.
So it happened really quickly. And so I just finished my 4th year, or I just finished my 3rd year. I'm starting my 4th year of assistant principal. So I did not feel prepared, only because I felt prepared, but at the same time, like, I was starting right after crunch time, and I didn't have like time to mentally think about it, prepare myself, whatever. But I had taught at Eastlake for 4 years, and I was coming back there to be their math coach, so I knew where Eastlake was headed. I knew what Eastlake was about, and I knew the staff there, so that helped make the transition a lot easier. Yeah. As for the transition to principal, I'm hoping to one day end up at Eastlake as principal, so hopefully that transition will be super easy too, but you never know.
How was the transition working with Eastlake teacher and now administrator, that type of transition?
I had to cut a lot of ties. I had to decide, you know, do I want to maintain these relationships as friends, or do I want to do the job like I'm supposed to do the job? And so after my first year, there was quite a lot of veteran turnover, which we normally have like teachers who have only taught for a year to become teach graders. But we had a lot of veteran turnover that year. And I think that was just because it was just an interesting position. The assistant principal that was there before me was very like, it's gonna be okay. Like, you know, she liked to give that kind of
Just
reassurance.
like
yeah, and I'm more like, nope, this is the way it is. This is how it has to be, and my principal is too. So it was okay. But I don't regret. I mean, it wasn't like I was like any of my best friends or anything. You know, they were my colleagues. We would go out, whatever. But it was. I kind of went in there knowing I'm going to be cutting these ties, and so I think that made it easier. I think it would have been. I'm glad I did it, but it was definitely a choice I had to make.
Kim, did you have a question along the same line?
I did. kind of want to know, whenever you came into the role of principal, what strategies were taken to help unify everyone under like one vision and one mindset, being that you were new in that role?
So, as an assistant principal, as I was going to be the math coach there, the principal and I had met quite frequently, just talking about, you know, what is Eastlake's vision, where are we going? Because as a coach, you know, you're kind of on the instructional team, even though you're not an administrator. So I already kind of knew all that. So then just stepping over from coach to administrator was a pretty easy transition into that way, because like we had already started to set up what the year was going to look like. So I just kind of jumped from a support person to more of a direct role in that matter. But a lot of it is just, you know, you only get one first day every year. And so making the first day for the teachers as good as can be, you know, making sure that on the very first day is when you set up, you know, this is who we are, this is where we're going, this is what we need you to do to be a part of where we're going on the first day, I think is super important. So like that's the first thing. Next Thursday, after we do a get to know you activity and breakfast, you know, the very first thing is, here's our mission that the staff created last year. This is who we are, this is where we're going, and this is how, you know, we need you to be on board with that.
Do y'all have any more questions? So do you have any more for us as we continue to finish out this program? And
once you're in those positions, I find some peers. My first year as assistant principal, because I was put into it so early or so late in the year, all of the assistant principals who had already been hired for that year the county had done like this together, and they had started doing some trainings and stuff. But because I was hired after the start date, I missed all of that. So my first year was a pretty lonely year. I knew one other assistant principal, so I called him for everything. You always have your principal. Nice to have somebody else in your position. So my second year, 2 years ago, there were 4 of us who met and who started a group chat, and that group chat has grown to, there are now like 9 of us in it. And so it makes sense to have people who do the same thing you do, whether it's in a similar school or a different school, because it's just such a lifesaver to have people to go get drinks with, you know, after a stressful day or after testing, or, you know, when you have a million questions, because even starting my 4th year, I still have a million questions about everything, you know, and I know I'm not going to bug them by sending a group text or by asking, you know, calling one of them up and asking them to do something. It just makes such a huge difference to like have your people. So that would be probably my biggest advice, because it was a hard first year just because I didn't know anybody, I didn't know what I was doing, and I felt bad asking my principal for everything. So find your people.
you have the same.
And she was the principal that I taught under. So I've known her starting my career. She's great and amazing. And one thing that was really nice about Eastland Master is from day one, we were right here together. I know in some principal assistant principal relationships, the principal's here, the assistant principal's here, and everybody knows it. But from day one, I mean, she's included me from every parent meeting she's had. Anytime anybody from the county comes, if they don't want me in there, as soon as they leave, she'll sit down and say, so this is what happened. So it's been really nice. I feel a lot more prepared to one day step into the role of principal, because I've had all this experience that not every AP gets. I think that's changing more and more these days. But I know, like, the first year I was a principal, when I did see an assistant principal that I kind of knew when we would start talking, you know, it was clear that I was doing a lot more and I knew a lot more than what they did, just because of how she took me in. And we really walked it.
What is the, so it's one principal, what are some of the other relationships you have at school?
So we have our principal and assistant principal. We have a primary coach and a half-time intermediate math coach. One role that's new this year is we have a site-based liaison induction specialist or something. I don't know. It's a fancy title, who works with new teachers. She's one of our teachers. So instead of the county mentoring program, instead of like having all these mentors, like one each for each new teacher, they're just doing like a main site-based mentor who will then work with some other teachers under them, but like she's the only one who gets paid for it. So it's like the main mentor. She's a teacher. So she's the main mentor for our school. So like every school is having like a main mentor. So
Is that every school?
So it's not opportunity. Aaron Kirby's over it.
I don't know Aaron. I don't know if we have one.
I don't know. Do you have new teachers?
I don't think I've read it.
It's only for brand new. That might be why. Good luck.
Bye, thank you.
Thank you.
We should have sent it to her.
I was trying to watch it. Weird. It's 26.
I was like, I don't know how much. Well,
We got two friends online.
Said that about you, though.
I got to be math coach and math coach, right?
Yeah.
How's it going? You ready? Already?
Okay. How are y'all?
Hi.
Hey.
It's you all.
Yeah, that's our little logo.
Every room is about money and attendance. Did they tell you that?
Yes.
So, Kim, you want to start us off again?
Yeah. This very first question that I was wondering about is about money and how it's spent at your school. But I wanted to know, what process do you take
What process do you take?
with determining how the funds are spent, and then how do you figure out what is priority in
What now?
Is it like
the money on?
I have a leadership team, and I pretty much try to run everything that I do. And so I really don't make any, especially a large chunk of money. Now, I will say this: we don't have a whole lot of money. We are not Title I. So I don't have Title I, so before I got there, then last year then I got off. I have very little money anyway. But there were a couple times last year we had to have projectors because teachers needed projectors. The projector just went out, or the meeting board went out. So I would either call my leadership team together and say, hey, I need to spend a couple $1,000 because we got to help some teachers out. But and most of the time, they don't ask questions because I think they trust me. That I don't do anything really big, anything over $100 and $200 without their approval. Now, I did just buy them t-shirts. I'm not asking them that. But they don't know they're getting t-shirts.
Who is on the leadership team that you refer to?
I have one from every grade level, and then they don't call them math coaches anymore. They call them, well, no, not math coaches. They call them anchor teachers. So both of my anchor teachers are on my leadership team. Myself. Did that help?
Yes, it did. Thank you.
Kim, you're going in and out a little bit, so let us know if you can't hear us.
Okay, thanks.
Someone else is. She's a passenger. She makes sure we all let us know.
I thought that was a seatbelt.
What are, you're not Title I, but what are some of the things that are priorities to spend for? Is it all instructional materials?
Most of it's instructional material. Last year, technology in the building. There was nothing. We have a big cafeteria. There was nothing in there for the kids can see announcements or anything from up there. And we did the house system. I don't know if you're familiar with the house system at this point. And I wanted to be able, the students to be able to see their points change.
Mm.
We spent a couple $1,000 on a really big TV for in there. And then some other teachers needed some technology in the room, like I mentioned earlier. But most of the money, I want to make sure it's either for the students or for the teachers.
Do you do school fees or instructional fees?
Well, we did last year. The system's trying to decide whether we're going to or not.
There's no telling.
And then vote tomorrow or tonight. If it's not, I don't know.
When you say instructional fees, what is that?
Every school in the past has been able to say, well, we can't demand that they pay, but we can say you need to pay $45, $50 for the school that will go towards buying supplies for the teachers.
Gotcha.
And it's instructional.
So do you guys just give money, like at my school, we have to actually buy either the supplies or a kit. So we don't have to, it's encouraged. And so every teacher will say, you know, I need 10 glue sticks. And I mean, it could be anything from like Kleenexes to notebooks to binders. Do y'all do that? Or is it just pretty much give $45 and then with that money, we decide what we're going to do?
Each grade level did a supply list.
Okay.
And we have those on our webpage.
Yep.
And of course, some kids do it, some kids don't.
Sure.
Kindergarten will be overflowing with supplies.
Mm-hmm.
Kindergarten parent will bring in everything on the list.
Right.
Fifth grade will run out next week because none of the fifth grade parents bring anything.
Right.
But they do have those supply lists.
Okay.
The instructional money really goes for the copy machine.
Gotcha.
Paper. We do
Yeah.
stock like index cards, pencils, markers,
Mm-hmm.
erase markers, those type of things.
Yep.
So the teachers can get those. That's really what the instructions.
What percentage of your family?
On Hamilton County's budget this year,
Last
they
year.
tried to get rid of all of the school fees and put into the budget that those school fees will be
I don't even
will
think it
be
was half.
at the county level, that every
Mhm.
school gets a certain amount.
Yeah, I
Because our budget was turned down by commissioners, that's still up in the air.
think we
Our
can-
Oh.
our board members really want that to be something that that's no longer set.
Yeah.
Some schools that have a up to, I mean, I've heard about $130 at some of the
Pay
performing arts
$45.
schools.
Mm-hmm.
And some schools at some of our lower income families don't even charge. So
Yeah.
there's a big inconsistency going on.
Yeah.
So it's a huge up in the air on whether or not the school system's gonna take on school fees, if we're gonna continue to allow school fees to happen.
So if the
But
system-
that's
We
why
didn't get any money.
it's, there's it's another
That's what
own
they
right
say.
now.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's good. Yeah. Thank you.
And we figured it was $12,000 more than what we got last year. So,
We were talking about the percentage, because our schools are like neighboring schools, so we were talking about the percentage of parents that are gonna pay the.
Yeah.
yeah.
So like.
What is that? Is it?
It got worse when they put it online, by the way,
Oh, I'm
too.
sure.
When they put it online, people go, oh, I don't have to pay.
Or they say, I'm gonna pay that online, and
And
they
they
never, that's
never
what
do.
they.
That's it.
It's about a third of the families.
Wow. And then how do you make that up? That just comes out of the budget, or do you expect teachers to?
You know,
It's really
we
a
just
bonus
don't
if you
have.
get it, Yeah.
You just don't have it. Okay.
We
Yeah.
do fundraisers. Last year we did one fundraiser, big fundraiser besides the coupon books, and I can't remember. No, we didn't. We decided not to do it. We went to Fun Fridays where we said kids could bring $1. Y'all do that at McConnell too, don't you?
Yes, every Friday we have an event, but the families have now also realized that they don't have to pay the dollar, and your
they
kid
still
can
have-
still do the event.
Yeah,
So
but
like
I
if
will
it's like
send a letter. My letter's gonna say, this is in lieu of us doing a candy
right.
bar
Mhm.
sale.
So like
you
if
need-
they tape the principal to the wall, every kid still gets to do that.
Yeah,
They can't not have the opportunity
Right.
to like get more taste.
yeah, I had
It was-
popcorn day and every kid got popcorn.
Oh, well, I didn't give it to every kid before, but they just got to watch the movie.
Yeah, we
I was a little
we
bit
did
more.
popcorn day and every kid, and
Yeah. it's-
popsicle day and every kid got a popsicle.
Yeah.
And some days kids brought money and some days they didn't.
Is that
Mhm.
nice though? Because the board policies.
No, we
No,
have to,
we
you
have to.
cannot keep a kid from,
But if it has anything to do with instruction, popsicle doesn't have anything to do with
that
instruction.
it
We,
used
it's
to.
very strict. Like
Yeah.
every kid
So
will.
we,
Sure, you
here's
can't limit
how it
them.
goes. We did a, the coupon book sale. And we did a little push at the end, and I don't remember what the incentive was, but it really paid off. But we had a parent that called in to the central office complaining
It's always like.
because their child was not going to get that incentive
Mm.
afford to sell the coupon book. They couldn't afford to buy care for their child. And so they called me, and I tried to talk to her. She wouldn't listen to me, so she called the central office. Dr. Parker called me. I had to explain myself to Dr. Parker. Dr. Parker took my side, but it was still a big, you know, you're not being fair as a parent. She was mad at me all year long. So,
She probably posted online. You're terrible.
well, attendance. Needed.
How do you encourage people?
Well, we thought this house system would make kids encourage them to go. We got hit really hard by the flu last year, 3 different times. We're probably going to be a little more proactive on attendance this year. When kids get to 3, we're probably going to have the teachers make a personal call. When it gets to 5, either myself or the assistant principal will make a call. So we're going to really try to stay on top. And, you know, try to encourage kids, talk to kids about being at school. I don't know if y'all seen the statistics, but I've got it on my phone, but it'd take me forever to find it. If a kid misses 10 days of school, how many hours of instruction they're actually, it's mind-boggling. Then it goes, if they miss 20 days of school, this is what your child's missing. So it's staggering. So we're really going to push those statistics to parents this year as well. You know, when your child is out, this is hurting your child.
How do you balance chronically absent and chronically tardy with the fact that it's on the parent, not on the student?
Yeah, it's just hard. I mean, I had a parent that applied for hardship, and she called and complained because she didn't get her hardship. I said, "Man, I didn't do it. Well, let me look into why you didn't get your hardship." And it was like 25 tardies, and they were like 9 o'clock or 9:30 or 10 o'clock, and then 30 absences on top of that. I said, "Hey, you realize your kid missed 30 days? Well, some of those were excused." I said, "Man, it doesn't matter. Your child's out of school." Some parents you just have to be point blank with. And so had one girl that missed 45 days.
Jeez.
And it wasn't until like she got to 40 that she was saying, well, she was bullied the last time she was in school. Of course, it'd been like 5 weeks since she had been in school. So,
How long have you been in the principal role?
this will be my second year. I'm starting my second year.
Do you an AP?
Yes.
Where were you an AP?
East Brainerd with Dr. Young.
High school?
No,
Elementary?
elementary.
Well, you taught high school though.
I did.
That's so I always think you came from high school to
I did.
elementary.
Yeah. I did those 3 years as a math coach, and when I applied to be assistant principal, Dr. Parker and Dr. Parker and Karen Hollis were both. I was friends with both of them, and they said they wanted me in elementary, and I like elementary.
Interesting. Do you have any other questions?
Do you want, Kristen, do you want to ask yours?
About transition?
Yeah, sure. This isn't about budgeting or attendance, but just in general, like the transition from teaching to becoming, an AP. Just, did you feel prepared? Is there anything, any words of wisdom? Just anything, I guess, with that transition. How was that?
Well, I had spent 17 years in the classroom in North Carolina before coming to Tennessee, and then I was in the classroom another 4 years at Tyner Middle before I came an instructional coach. The big thing is to remember what it's like to be a teacher. Don't need to forget that. Not to say at the same time, you got to hold teachers accountable. Because when I was in the classroom, it was important to me to be.
Yeah.
And so, but need to remember what it's like to be in the classroom. I felt like I went through Carson Newman though, and I felt like Carson Newman really prepared me to be an assistant principal. The other piece of that was I had an incredible principal that I worked for who the very first day she said to me, "What is your plan? Do you want to be a principal?" And I said, "Yes, I do." And she said, "When do you want to be one?" And I said, "Well, I'd like to be one in 2 or 3 years." So she said, "Well, I'm going to be a little harder on you and a little more demanding on you than I would otherwise." And so I felt like it is Dr. Marthel Young. I don't know if y'all know Dr. Marthel. I felt like
Teacher of the
she,
year that year?
what?
Wasn't she teacher or principal of the year that year?
Yes, she was.
Wow.
So I felt like she really prepared me. So last year as a principal, I felt very prepared. There was not really a whole lot that came my way that I wasn't prepared for. She actually would call me the principal of grades 3, 4, and 5 at East Brainerd. And the 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade at East Brainerd is larger than the whole school at Davie.
Wow.
Wow.
It's a big school, but I would say your program here is really preparing you for. I would take everything to heart. I know that they were saying that the whole budget thing was a very tough assignment. I don't know how real life it was because I haven't seen it, but I would take it to heart and just realize that it really is preparing you for it. Because I go back to what I learned through my program and really feel like my program prepared me for it. But I do want to say, remember what it's like to be in the classroom. Don't ever forget that. So it's tough. I'm a defender of classroom teachers. So that
Do you have
makes
any
sense.
desire to
Yeah, that's good.
for school leadership, or are you happy in elementary?
Well, I just finished my ADD, so I'm trying to decide what I want to do.
Okay,
Yeah, I'll probably stay a principal for a few more years before I really decide what I want to do.
sure.
When you grow up.
Yeah, when I grow up. I wouldn't mind being a director at some point.
But do you want to get into the middle or high school levels? Leadership?
I think to be a director, I really need to go
Sure.
to the middle school or high school level.
Just to get
Hmm.
Yeah, I think it would be tough to stay at this level and be an effective director.
just different.
So let me know if y'all need anything. Okay, I'll be more than willing to help y'all.
Thank you.
Thank y'all.
Hey you all. Hey you all. I am having some difficulty on my phone.
Okay.
And whenever I am streaming like video and audio, it's where I can hardly hear and I'm going in and out. So if I take the video off, then I can hear you better. So that's why video is not running for me.
Yeah, that's totally fine. As long as you can hear us, I think that's totally good.
Yes, I can hear you.
So Kim's there. She just can't. You can't see her. Kristen's up there.
Okay.
Hi.
Hello.
Will you remind us where you're?
I'm Jasmine, and I'm at East Side.
East Side. You're the
Elementary.
principal at East
Assistant
Side.
principal.
Assistant principal at East Side.
Principal,
Okay.
Yes.
How long have you been the
I have
assistant principal?
been there for 18 months.
Okay.
So I came out of the classroom in December.
Okay.
Went
Oh, wow.
straight from the classroom in the middle of the year. Had to leave.
Oh.
It was so sad. I cried and they cried. No, I was at East Brainerd as a teacher, and then went to East Side.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
So
we'll definitely want to talk about this transition, but let's get to our attendance and budget questions.
Okay.
Kim, you want to start us off?
Yeah, I sure will. The very first question that I had was about spending money. What process is taken at your school when determining what to spend? Is it made through a leadership team? Are those decisions made through leadership teams, or how are those decisions made?
Okay, so I will speak more from the Title I budget perspective, because that's more so my role right now at my school. And so what was different for me, a learning curve coming from East Brainerd, is that all of the budget decisions were made by the leadership team. So our principal would bring budget, we would talk about if we were going to hire people, if we were going to buy materials, if we could buy technology, we would vote on it, and then she would go ahead and do whatever it was that we agreed upon. Since I've been the East Side, it's more so an administrator's decision. So this year, we are trying to do better with incorporating the leadership team. So like I said, I came in mid-year. My principal also came in mid-year. So we both got promoted in the middle of the year. So it was his first year as a principal and my first year as an assistant principal, mid-year.
Yeah.
So that first semester, we didn't do anything. We didn't make any changes. Whatever was in place, that's what we did. Last year was our first full year, and we were kind of just swimming. And so the leadership team wasn't utilized.
Who is on your leadership team?
We have one grade level chair from each grade level, our librarian, our 2 academic coaches, and our secretary. We've invited parents, but we're a Title I school, 100% poverty, so a lot of times we can't get parents. So that's something that we're trying to work on. But this year, we're trying to better utilize the leadership team. But like, you have to turn in your Title I budget in the summer. And so we kind of just kept it the same.
What are some of your Title I budget priorities?
People. We pay for 1 full-time academic coach. We pay for 3 educational assistants, 3 interventionists. I think that's all the people that we pay for. Oh, we hired a math interventionist this year. And so people are a top priority because our population is 75% Guatemalan. Most of our kids are either learning English or they just started speaking English fluently, and so we needed a lot of extra support for the teachers. We have 10 ESOL teachers in my school. We have 600 kids, 10 ESOL teachers. But after people, we try to go with teacher supplies, things like that. And then we like to put in money for substitutes for like professional days. Like if we're gonna have a half a day and we want 3rd grade to do a learning lab, we want to get subs for them. We also put a lot of money in technology. Last year we just went 1-to-1, 2 through 5. And so we didn't have to, Chromebooks. So we didn't have to put in $88,000 for technology this year. That was just for last year. And so we got a couple of new programs. So we're trying to put money for field trips for our kids to go background knowledge, and stipends. We have like after school tutoring, things like that. Those are our biggest Title I budget priorities. Like I said, since we're 100%, our title budget is close to $400,000.
Do you charge a school fee at all?
We do charge a school fee. I mean,
yeah.
What percentage of people?
Oh goodness, if I had to think of a percentage, probably less than 10. And it's only $20.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Is that the same throughout all grades? Is $20?
Yep, $20. And so it's like just more of a donation. So if we do get school fees back, then we divvy it up amongst the grade levels to put more money in the teacher accounts for supplies.
Oh, so you put it all together first. It doesn't stay in that grade level.
No.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, and then we just divvy it up. You might get $10 extra.
Is it $200 for EP at your school?
They get
Then we also on budget for finance. You want to start with the attendance?
Sure. Okay, so we'll start positively. How do you guys encourage attendance at your school?
I will say, knock on wood, our attendance rates are amazing. Our absentee rate this year was 2.1.
Wow.
2.1. Our school
It's
is
got to be one of the lowest in the county.
Oh, it definitely is. We've gotten awards for the past like 5 or 6 years. And teacher attendance as well. East side. East side. And so we're like a true school that's like right in the middle of the neighborhood. We have 600 kids. We only have 3 buses that run. Our kids walk.
Wow. Okay.
Wow.
Because of where we're located, it's easy for the kids to get to school. They just have to walk. Like I said, our population is mostly Guatemalan, and our parents are really that old school parent that you think does not exist anymore. Like my school has all of those parents. You're coming to school, you're gonna sit down, you're gonna do what you're supposed to do. Like calls me. And so I think our kids just know. I don't think they know their parents value education, but they know they need to come.
Yeah,
so
they know it's an expectation.
Yeah.
How cool. You don't hear that very often.
It is very rare.
Yeah.
But our school is very unique in that.
So it sounds like you don't have this problem as often, but with the ones that you do have chronically absent or chronically tardy, how do you deal with that situation and the fact that it's your problem, not really a student
Not a
problem.
student, and so, you know, Hamilton County or whoever implemented that new policy where you send a letter home after this many 8 to 10, and then you have to have a meeting, and then if they go between 10 to 15, you have another meeting with the truancy officer. So that policy, I will say it helped just a tad. Honestly, it was more of a burden on administration.
Sure.
Scheduling meetings and sitting down with parents and reading the script and having them sign it. And then I don't really know if they, because the end is there's really no consequence still, but you had to go to another meeting. And so that was very time consuming for us for the tardies, because that's most of our problem is tardies. But what was your other question?
Just how do you deal with the fact that it's not students, it's parents that are the issue.
That's basically it. That's all we do. And the kids, we named the 2.1%.
Yeah.
And we call them, like I said,
how many estimated?
It was literally 6 kids.
Okay. Yeah.
And one
so
of
you
them
start picking them up at your house.
Yeah. No joke. My school is that old school.
Yeah.
Like my principal and I, after school, would drive to people's houses or walk over there. Or our school has a lot of siblings. So you're at school, but that's your sister and she's at school. So sending letters through them. We have a full-time interpreter. She would call. Like those kinds of things were we didn't have to do like celebrations and incentives and things like that. So the few that we had, like you said, it was a parent problem.
Yeah.
And we met with them, like we did the steps.
But it sounds like if the siblings there, then they should
Yeah.
all be there.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
So
that's a great, great non-existent problem to
yeah,
have.
so we're all,
Yeah.
we don't want that to change.
Anything else around attendance? You want to ask your transition question, Kristen?
Sorry, yeah, sorry. I've asked this question 3 times. Like, I feel like. So my biggest question, I guess, is just becoming, you know, an AP and just, I guess, like how long were you in your teacher role or whatever you did before until you moved up, and how was the transition? How'd you feel? What was the biggest change? Or, you know, just, I guess, what peers, or, I mean, you actually moved schools though, right?
Yeah.
So that's probably good. That's probably helpful.
Yeah. Transition for me was bittersweet because they opened up the pool in like February. So I applied in February. End of the year in May, when it was summer, I mean, in my classroom, minding my business. I applied next February. So September, I was teaching, and they called me on the office. Down, you know, I went down there and go out to junior college and I was still, I mean, like my mind was not there. I did, and you know, they kind of started having conversations around on the page, you know, your email the next couple of days, and you go see the email, and then you'll know where you're going. And so an email came out.
So you held your breath.
You're
feeling so positive about the whole thing.
Your classroom, everybody's already looking at you. It's the office people. And anyway,
It was just context clues.
it's like, well, it's like an but that was really hard for me because I don't have my class. So it was just really, so coming in mid-year, something that's already established.
Yeah.
And everybody, you know, I was the only facilities, I just use the classrooms, I car walker do just kind of just and that was just my one goal. This August, I feel like I'm ready to jump in.
Awesome. Thanks.
Kim, did you have a question?
Yeah, being that you were new and your principal was new, how did you all unify everyone under one vision and one mission, being that both of you all were new in those roles?
So like I said, from January to May, we didn't make any changes. So whatever the previous principal had set and those were her goals, we just followed along with that from January to May. And then last year was that year of big transition. Anyway, we had like Master Connect, Canvas, Learning Talk. We had a million things.
Overload.
Yeah, it was just overload. We sat down and we just decided this year, we're not changing anything. We're not adding anything. And that's just kind of what people not familiar with the day one. We just make sure we're together and it's learning curve right now. And so that's all the big measures kind of focus on starting to make inside our home.
Yeah. Thanks.
Do you have any other advice for us as our class teacher leadership? Okay. What program are the two of you in?
Principal leadership.
Yeah, I don't even, it's the postmasters. I don't even really.
So we don't
Okay, this is my first class. Yeah.
Advice, if you're not already doing it, try to take on as many things as possible. Don't feel like I cannot do one more thing for you right in this role. Always know that that's your path, or if people don't know that that's what you want to do, just reach out to your person and say, no, find your strengths and ask them for opportunities in that area. Find your weaknesses also and ask them for opportunities before you step out. And explain their Dr. Young, and finding opportunities. And so I would just say, take on as many as possible, so that way you will not be shocked.
Yeah.
Other things to do, different things.
Around the corner any second, like for that. Do you have anything else?
Yeah, I got my undergrad here. I got my teaching leadership. Isn't it for 3 years?
I was like,
I chose you to ask.
So I've had several.
I've got 2 kids. I have 3-year-olds.
Yeah, that's like, it's gonna be, I mean, it's 5, 6.
Oh. Yeah. There's
Margaret's at Vanderbilt.
okay.
And she just told me she graduated.
That's why. Oh.
So
Thank
I'm working
you
both
all.
programs.
And you were at Central Office, right?
I am.
Okay, what's your name?
Olivia Bagby. I work
Okay.
over all the Future Ready Institutes.
Oh,
So that's why
cool.
I'm really only in the high schoolers. So I don't know any
Yeah.
of the elementary people.
Well, thank you. Good luck, everybody.
Thank you.
Am I in the right place? No, you're done.
Just go home. Hello.
Hi.
Will you remind us Calvin Donaldson?
Yes.
And the principal?
I'm the principal.
Dakota. I'm at Calvin Donaldson.
And how long have you been the principal?
I've been the principal. This is my second year at Calvin Donaldson. Prior to that, I worked at Memphis for years, and prior to that, I was now I think okay. No, I didn't. But if you would ask me,
So now you're gonna go with him forever. You know you
well, you know, I was in Vegas for 11 years as a teacher. I I taught a little bit of elementary and always in a Title I. After 11 years, I just decided I wanted to change. I wanted to leave Las Vegas, which was fun. I just wanted something different. I wanted to slow it down a little bit. Vegas had been pretty big. It's a big city, there's a lot of traffic. So then I got an opportunity to I didn't like it from the first month, but I decided to.
Elizabeth Wilson at Wilson. She's at Red Bank Elementary this year. She just happens to have this almost the exact same path. She came from Vegas, came to Chattanooga.
No, I didn't meet her.
That's what I was like. She's at Red Bank Elementary this year, but I just thought that was a coincidence. But Kim, do you want to start us off with our budgeting questions?
Yeah. The very first question I had is about money and how it is determined to be spent at your school. Is there like a process that you take? Is there a leadership team that helps determine those things? Just kind of interested about that process that you take when figuring out how to spend the money.
So, you know, money for us is zero issue. So not only do we have a sizable title budget, which is nearly $250,000, I also this past year won a priority school grant. I was one of 10 students in the state to win that grant, which enabled us to have $375,000 each year for 3 years. So it's about $1 million grant. So money isn't an issue. I'm just being really honest. And what I did involving leadership team with that is, number one, I would come up with a plan of how I wanted to spend the money. I would share with the leadership team that we would talk from there. We had one grade level representative from every grade level. We had a coach on I pick and choose my and also for people that I think really have a good long range for figuring out how to invest for our students. So, and did the same thing this year, by the way, I chose a leadership. And then, of course, I also had a grant committee, which also helped have those conversations with me about of a couple of teachers, my assistant principal, and 4 states.
What are some of your Title I budget priorities?
It's not all about people.
Yeah. What are some of the
yeah, so this year we're the first school in Hamilton County to have an on-site RTI coordinator. Oh wow! So that's what that was a big chunk of my title money. I also put a so each of those our kids, a lot of them are not ready for it. So they need those extra hands, and you know if our kinder classes get to 21, 22, 23. I was able also no. Yeah, and also I was able to hire some tutors. So the tutors like tutor actually works with our ESOL kiddos. Well, so I've been able to have a series of tutors and target specific students. They were not our like tier 3 students. They were our students that were approaching. Gotta be strategic.
Yeah. What are some of the things you spend your sort of grant money or title money on that's not personnel?
So this going into this year, we bought a math program called ST Math, which nobody else in the county is using. Look it up; it's really cool. ST stands for Spatial Temporal. It's a web-based program. What else? Yes, and actually, we've been one-to-one tablets, but last spring I was able to raise enough donations from community partners that were one-to-one. They just got them 2 weeks ago, so it really is. And they're brand new, but they're really nice thin ones.
Yeah.
I think so. I agree.
It's taking
The tablets don't go home either.
Nope. I mean, they were taking them home, and then of course they were back. There were podcasts that were saying somebody tried to pull it in her tablet.
CD as a tag. Come in again.
So I just to avoid that temptation, we have teachers. It's really honestly last year we only lost, which I felt like pretty good. So I think it's there's less temptation to steal this. And of course they can be very influenced by others, right? So if the child is wanting to keep it, they might have a big brother or cousin.
Take it home.
That's it. Yeah. So we don't I got rid of it last year and instructional fee at all. I mean, what nerve would I just charge them? Basically for families with all the money. I mean, and the other part of it is it kind of flies in the face of equity because according to my secretary, there's 30% of parents who would struggle to pay that $10 or $20 and the rest don't. So how is it that parents who are just as needy for the most part came up with the money? So I just agreed with it last year. Parents were very happy. Teachers were happy. They didn't have to deal with money. There hasn't been one thing that I said. I haven't had to. And why would I? Sure. So they come with needs and wants and I say yes. I might say if it's something that I'm like, I might say try to run choose, maybe try that avenue first. If not, let's figure it out. And gotten everything that we wanted. Do we sound spoiled?
as a non-Title I school, yes. With
Yeah.
the lack of any money coming in.
It's a weird problem to have, that's for sure.
Yes.
Very often.
We don't know what your attendance. So everyone that's come in has had a different level of attendance problems. Okay, so your school do you struggle with chronic absenteeism?
Yes. When I took over the year before I got here, it was like 7 points. We reduced it to 14 points. So we've reduced it about 3% this last year, which I think is respectable. But is it a problem? It is absolutely a problem.
What have you guys done to encourage attendance to try to drop?
Well, one of the things we've done is we've tried to make school a little bit more fun. We've had celebrations for kids, and we've done more student recognition. Another thing that we've done on the other side of that is we've had our counselor, our social worker reaching out to parents. Sometimes we can scare parents into sending their kids. Yeah.
Well, and that's kind of the other side of our question of how you deal with chronically absent and chronically tardy. Problem, not a student problem.
Yeah, I mean, you have to address the parents. So we have a lot of attendance in those like this. Those are a lot of attendance conferences with parents, talking about the importance of, and also we did a really good job this year as a school attendance. So we got our report cards where they reflected student achievement. So instead of little Johnny sits there quietly and they get an A or a B, which which had been the pattern at Donaldson, we have standards-based grading, grades 3, 4, and 5 as well. So when teachers have a formula they have to follow, so 60% has to be reviewed, 30% for quizzes or 2 out the door, 10% of that grade is discretionary for the teacher. So there's no way if you have somebody getting an A or B. So with our parents who have their child in grades have a report our abilities and a lot of those they also missed out 42 days this semester, so and that was very helpful as well.
Based grading. I mean, we even struggle with that at times.
Does it look like the 1, 2, 3, 4 like a K2 report card, or do you guys change? You know, the K2 has that really extensive. Okay. In addition to like a
numerical grade, like a percentage. Okay. Yep.
I didn't know if they got to be K2 standard. No. Okay.
That's just K2. Okay. Yep. That stops in the 3rd grade. So, you know, it's communication. So at every parent, at every time we had parents who had conversations about that. I had individual conversations with parents. I trained teachers on how to have those conversations with parents. Copies of the standards. We started out our first event in August. Is we give parents the initial STAR assessments for their students. They know right away. They know, oh, my little 4th grader is reading. There's no surprises at the end of the year when report card comes and they're wondering why they haven't. Well, I don't know if you know, but the district really frowns on retention. So we started a retention list in probably January or February, and I got a lot of heat. We had 30 women's on the retention. And by the way, we probably could have retained 100 easily. So I went through the whole process, and I was asked not to retain children that their parents weren't on board. So my job at that point was to talk to parents, and some of them didn't get a hold of, but try to get parents in to have those conversations. So 31 ended up in reality with 6 retention. But it's better than none.
Yeah.
Which is what it had been.
It's so those things are agreed that your child wasn't ready to move on.
They did. So we shared data.
Yeah.
Teachers the advantages, this, and this. So we had that whole conversation, and those parents. I even had one of them say, "I wanted them retained." So I had comments like that. So I think for these kids, if the parents on board, I've seen them. I've seen it, especially we only looked
that's where it needs to be.
Yeah. We didn't look at anybody above 2nd grade.
You've been
as a teacher, I spent the classroom in middle school. As a coach, I was in elementary. I was a math coach in elementary school, and as a principal, I built.
Kristen, you want to ask your transition question?
Yeah, sure. So my question, it's not about finance or attendance, but just in general, kind of your move from teaching or being a coach to assistant principal, just kind of how was that transition? Did you feel prepared? Just any kind of suggestions you can give us? What can we do other than obviously taking these classes, but just any wisdom that you have for us?
Yeah. So I would have to say that the best way to have somebody above you who is willing to really take an interest and mentor you. So when I was in Vegas, I was two separate schools, but I worked for the same principal. So she moved and said, "I'll only move if Rose can go." That's nice. So we worked together for 4 years. Saw leadership, let me take responsibilities far and away past my responsibilities as a coach. And I learned a lot from her, and she was interested not in just me performing well for her, but in me becoming a great school leader. And so that's, to me, that's the number one thing. You need someone that will do it. And by the way, I went from that coach position to a principal. I was never an assistant principal.
Wow.
So you really needed that.
I did. I was ready. So it was because I had such a great mentor.
Wow.
That is really interested in, and she was always, she told me the real deal. She didn't sugarcoat it. I really got to see what the job was like. So that was great.
Our time has come to an end.
Okay, my
Class
time.
is going to take a break. This is for you, and I can't thank you enough.
No, thank you so much. I really enjoyed it. I got to meet a lot of
Right. We're going to take a break. People at home, we're going to have a 10-minute break.
We did. I always going to get better. And,
oh, well.
Thank you. Bye. Thank you. Kim, did he say we're taking a 10-minute break?
I believe he did. I'm
Okay.
not really sure, but I think
All right.
he did.
All right. I have to pee, so I'll be back.
Okay.
We spent a lot of time looking and talking about the Hamilton County Board policy specifically around bullying, harassment, cyberbullying, as well as compared it to a couple of other counties' board policies. Really, some of these are the big things that we took away as far as the admin's response. It cannot be based solely on anonymous tips. So there is multiple different ways for a student or parent to report bullying situation, and every situation has to be investigated, but a action cannot be taken solely on an anonymous tip. Bullying requires a full investigation, and that investigation must start within 48 hours of the report. And then within 20 days of that investigation starting, the problem must be resolved or documented as to why it is not resolved.
I'm going to pause you for just a second. On the anonymous tip issue, you said that action can't be based.
Yes.
Right.
So, but an investigation
Can
start,
commence.
yes.
Right.
And
Right.
actually has to start. Every report has to be investigated within 48 hours.
We used to use, and I'm sure it's still out there, a program literally called Anonymous Tips.
Quick tips. Yeah.
Well, it's anonymous tips, but I mean it's still anonymous. There's a company called Anonymous Tips, and there's one called Quick Tips too. Okay, as long as you have some sort of method where people can go on and make an anonymous tip. As a principal, all the anonymous tips went straight. I would set it up, and it all went straight to my inbox, but you never knew who it was coming from, which was good. I've been in some schools that physically had like a tip like thing that you could fill out on a piece of paper, and I'm like, that's the most, people aren't going to want to stand there and fill something out. They need to have a way to do it where they feel safe. But I just wanted to make sure people understood the difference between not basing your response on the anonymous tip, but the need to investigate an anonymous tip. Okay, now please continue.
So response to retaliation issues, so the actual discipline being happening is at a school-based level. There is no board policies at the current state of this equals this offense. As far as communication goes, the district policy continues to talk about who to involve, talking about parents, if necessary, police, and other forces. 2 people involved, parents, school officials, as far as getting them involved in what's going on. Documentation, we talked about the bullying form to the, as well as there's a lot of, anytime bullying is happening, we have to report it both to the district and the state level. The parents, there's a parent grievance form online that parents can fill out that is not anonymous, and then the quick tips online that both parents and students can fill out anonymously.
Okay. And each district will be different on this. So, you know, if you're in Cleveland or elsewhere, the big thing is that that bullying documentation will have a chain of who that needs to go to, the follow-up on that. You'll always need to be able to document how you followed up and that you submitted that documentation up. You get to play, as an administrator, you play a little game of CYA, which is cover your butt, where you need to always make sure that you do your job. And if part of your job is documenting, you need to make sure that that happens. I never want you, as an administrator in a school, to be the one that ends up in the newspaper for not taking an appropriate response to an incident. Because it seems like every other week there's an article in a magazine about a bullying incident and how the administration or the school didn't do anything. And that always bothered me because I could always bring up a litany of things that we actually did. But anyway, Dana? Yeah.
Is that pretty, would you mirror that, most of what's up there, even if you couldn't come to an agreement on bullying, like kids aren't agreeing, the stories don't match, you try to investigate, can't figure out if it's happening, not happening, like you still fill out the form and communicate with people involved?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep, yep.
Every report has to start
So even if it was inconclusive.
well, and then so you have to conclude it within 20 days. So our policy, Hamilton County specifically said that you have to finish the investigation within 20 days. Shayna's County said within 20 days, or what was the other part of that statement?
They needed documentation why it couldn't be finished.
So it sounds like that type of situation of it's inconclusive. Hamilton County didn't have it specified as if it's inconclusive. It just said it needed to be finished within 20 days.
Where I worked, actually, unless there was proof that it wasn't happening, there was an assumption that it was, and you acted as though it was. You know, rarely does someone report something that's, you know what I mean, that's not happening, and unless those people can prove. But you know, it's interesting because usually you get the parties together, and more often than not, we could find peaceful resolutions. One of the keys to that, though, and this comes back to what we were talking about earlier, was at first trying to keep the parents not involved in the student-to-student discussions. We even had peer mediators, but because I tell you what, the parents would come into those meetings more ready to get into a fight than the kids did. You know, but anyway. Any other questions? All right. And our legal folks, nice and loud so we can hear you at home.
Yes. All right, so we have to investigate like the statutory and the policy and the handbook.
Fortunately for Tennessee, their statutory laws pretty much got everything else throughout the county. So there's 9 laws/regulations in Tennessee. It has to include harassment, intimidation, and bullying. So basically any act that interferes with the students. There's different guidelines for when it's off school grounds or when it's on school grounds, which on school grounds includes any form, basically anything funded by the school. So school laptops, school transportation, school after school event, anything like that. So for on the school, so school issued property, equipment, transportation, physical harm, damage to any property, reasonable fear to physical harm, emotional distress, or creates a hostile environment. If it's outside of any of those, it's directed at a specific student, has an effect of creating that hostile environment, or substantial disruption to educational learning process. Under those, it also requires each district to have a policy with these 7 key concepts. So it has to have a statement that says it's prohibited. It has to define what those bullying, the bullying and harassment and the intimidation is. It has to tell where and when it applies. So essentially like off and on campuses. Procedures, how to report, what those consequences will be, the statements of how to publicize the policy, and then also it has to provide counseling support, which we did look, and Hamilton County actually adheres to all of that.
I'm sure that they do.
Okay. And it's accessible to anybody. I mean, we just Googled it and it's accessible.
Yep. Okay, any questions on any of those? Okay, I just think it was important. I wanted to take some time to talk about bullying tonight because we didn't really have much of a chance when we had our other 2 administrators here and we were discussing discipline. We didn't have a lot of time to talk about it. And for those of you who become administrators, oftentimes you start out as an assistant principal, and when it comes to discipline, that's an issue that you will have to deal with. Probably the most important thing that was, besides prevention, which if you don't have an anti-bullying program in your school, be a hero and start that. But the other thing that I want to make sure that you walk away with from is that you know that your district has policies and that you as an administrator are required to follow those policies and procedures. Because a lot of times we'll get principals who go out and they make up their own procedures and they react a certain way and it's not in line with the district policy. And that's what will, as an administrator, that's what will get you in trouble, is when you don't follow those policies. But when you're in the court and you can show that you followed the policies, even if what you did might not have been the best choices, if you followed the policies, that's what's going to matter the most. Please do.
So with that documentation, how important it is to keep that documentation after you've reported it. A student and or parent can sue you, the school, or the district up to 10 years after an incident, and we're dealing with that in Hamilton County all the time, of parents that their kid is way past the incident. I mean, there's different principals that working at the school that are having to hunt down people because they're suing the district over a bullying case 10 years later.
Do we know if there's a, well, I know that there is. That's why those forms, the ones that get moved up the food chain, that's why those are so important, the documentation.
And a lot of things nowadays is
Electronic.
So, but 10 years ago they weren't. So the current issues are harder. But teacher notes and stuff like that, you might have taken or stuff like that we all want to clean out our desk every year. Anything to do with bullying, you can't throw anything out or even delete from your drive because it's biting principals in the butts currently.
Yeah. No, that's a great point. I literally still have all of my notes from when I was.
For bullying and safety, if you're a CTE teacher or have CTE teachers, for PE for that matter, anything that did with testing students on safety, it has to be kept for 10 years.
Excellent point. What? Right? Okay.
When was the last time you bullied? Could you?
I was wondering if